Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is The World According to GUS with Reverend Charles Edwardus.
Welcome to the World According to GUS. I'm your host, Charles Eduardos, and we are looking forward to having an awesome time today on our program. Today, our guest, my guest, we have one, and looking forward to having this young lady back with us with another person to talk about some really fascinating things. So I'm getting out ahead of myself. But my guest today is Gerry Fathauer, who is just an amazing woman who has amazing accomplishments. And we're going to be talking about the Enneagram, a tool for self-discovery, for growth, and for transformation. So with that being said, let me bring in our special guest today, Ms. Gerry Fathauer, and blink, blink. Hi, how are you, Gerry?
Good morning. Good morning, Charles.
Welcome to the program. I'm just so excited to have you on. Just a little background for our audience. I kind of met you out of my spontaneity, my 7 sticking out, and I am a 7 on the Enneagram for the audience, and I was looking for information about the Enneagram in my local area and came across Gerry and found that she had a group going, and showed up for the group, and our relationship has grown from there, and I've learned so much from her, and with the narrative tradition that Gerry will share more about how that works and how we in the group kind of teach each other. And I've noticed her say things like thank you to different people within the group as they share their experience of their personality type and how it works with them. And Gerry responds with, thank you for teaching us. And I just found that so amazing. But this is part of how the narrative tradition works. So Gerry, welcome. Tell us who you are. Tell us how you came to be who you are.
Thank you, Charles. I am an explorer. I think I always have been from a young age, and my background really is in the arts, especially in music. I tell people music is who I am, and in fact, we are all vibration, which I didn't know initially in music, but we are all vibration, which gets more into the energy aspect of my work. I'm also an Enneagram teacher. I'm a certified Enneagram teacher in the narrative tradition, as you have said. And what that means is that we teach and learn the Enneagram by exemplars. So there are panels of people of a given type, and I'll back up in a moment and talk about those types. And each individual talks about what it is like to live from an experience being that type. I lead with type 3. You mentioned you lead with type 7. And so that the class gets to learn from that individual as well as from written and reading material. There's a vast array of books that have been written since the 70s on the Enneagram itself. Mm-hmm. So at any rate, I love this because it teaches people compassion. There are 9 types in the Enneagram, and it teaches people compassion for those 8 other ways of viewing the world. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to back up. The Enneagram is a system of understanding people in the world, works in all languages and cultures, based on where people's attention goes and what motivates or organizes them. Often our motivations are unconscious. So the Enneagram begins to shine a light on unconscious behaviors and motivations and begins to explain reactivity. many other things that it does, but it is actually a system that helps people to see their blind spots
Right.
and to understand themselves better, and as well as to understand others in the world.
Right. Just kind of to back up a little bit with some of the history too. How well the Enneagram is ancient, and for all intents and purposes, my understanding is nobody knows exactly where it originated, but it was kind of brought back in our more contemporary times through the work of um, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, and there are some different approaches that he took, and pretty much his major contribution to the Enneagram of personality was the three types, which we'll get into as well. But then Oscar Ichazo from Bolivia was the one that kind of was the beginnings of the Enneagram personality types, and he and Claudio Naranjo are the ones that brought it into North America and into our more recent Western traditions. And not to belabor that, but was there anything around the history of Enneagram coming in that struck you that you would want to comment on?
Thank you for that history. Yes, Gurdjieff actually worked with, he was interested in, among many things, the evolution of consciousness, as I understand, the Turkish Armenian philosopher, and he actually learned from Sufis and other Eastern traditions, what we now call the Enneagram. I've been told in the history that it may be 2,000 to 4,000 years old, and it was originally danced. So Gurdjieff, appreciating the energy of each of the 9 types, created a 9-pointed star. Ennea is a Greek word for 9, and grammos is symbol. So the Enneagram is actually the symbol of a 9-pointed star inside a circle. And he would have people stand on those points, and actually he called it his 9-pointed process, and experience the energy of the type. And I'm probably not doing his process justice, but that's a brief thumbnail sketch. And then, as you say, Ichazo took some work of a 4th century desert father monk named Evagrius and mapped that onto Gurdjieff's process. And then Naranjo was the one who brought all of this knowledge to the United States in, I believe, the early 70s in California. And it spread, North America is more accurate, it spread from there. So because I have such an interest in rhythm and energy and process, a process of self-discovery, taking responsibility for myself, higher consciousness, if you will, self-awareness, when I stumbled across the Enneagram in this particular history, it was like I had come home. So I hope I'm answering your question about
absolutely.
History. Naranjo also is given credit for this narrative process because he was the first to use the panel method that I've already mentioned, whereby we get to learn from exemplars of the type itself.
Yeah, wow. It is so fascinating, which is one of the reasons that when I first approached you, I said, would you be willing to do more than one program? Because I know this is, there's so much to this and so much to the understanding of it. Does it make sense? Would you be comfortable with, let's just kind of go around the circle and kind of a quick little snapshot of each one of the types, and then we can look at how those are influenced by, by the integration, disintegration. There's so many aspects of how the Enneagram works, which is one of the reasons that I love it, because it just doesn't take a person and put them in a box as a particular type. It's a flow of energy, and it's nuanced by I think it was it was either Hudson or Rizzo who, along with, and that's the other part of the history. I'm getting ahead of myself. And I'll just back up and say Dave Daniels and Helen Palmer are the authors of the narrative tradition that you basically follow, correct?
That's correct, Charles. They're the founders of the Enneagram Professional Training Program, which is the program through which I certified. And they have both written books. Helen Palmer's The Enneagram, I think it's simply called The Enneagram, is one of the original books in the late 70s. It's been translated in over 30 languages. So yes, they are my teachers and mentors. Helen is still teaching some. David Daniels passed on a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to start to answer your questions. I'm going to show, I don't know if this is going to be legible at all.
Oh, yes, great.
Because it's a symbol. I want to start by that, especially for our viewers who are visual, to have a visual of this. So I will work my way around the 9 types. I'd like to start by saying there are 3 centers of intelligence. And so there are 9, and so there are 3 types in each of the 3 centers of intelligence. So I'm going to start at number 1, which is actually in the body center. I'll work 1 through 9. And the 1 is the attention goes to correcting error. And the 1 is a perfectionist. That's the label most often used. I don't like label. I would say that's the name most often used for the type 1. And it may also be a teacher. Sometimes some authors call the type 1 a teacher or a reformer. Some people identify more with one name other than others. The 1 is someone who holds oneself rigidly, tightly, because not only do they see error in the world that needs correcting, there's also an inner critic that drives them to hold themselves correctly as well. I'm going to move quickly, and there's so much that can be said about each type. I want to give a thumbnail sketch. The type 2 is actually in the heart center, type 2, 3, and 4. So they lead with the heart center versus the body like type 1. The type 2 is typically called the giver or the helper. And the type 2 attention goes to the needs of others. And what the type 2 misses in herself is her own needs. The type 2 energetically presents, as opposed to holding herself tightly like the type 1, very bright-eyed and bubbly, and tends to lean toward, because the heart center types want the approval of others. So their attention is very much other directed. The type 3 is often called the achiever or the performer. And the type 3's attention goes to getting tasks done and to looking good in the process.
Okay.
I lead with type 3. So my practice, and a sidebar, is not to view the Enneagram as an astrology map of sorts, but rather an inner work map. And by that I mean it enables us to soften those edges of the box you mentioned. We're in a box, but we don't know it. Okay. So the Enneagram enables us to see that and to find our way out of it. So that for the 3, for me, my work would be to be less presentational and less on and less task driven all the time, and actually to relax and have fun.
Okay.
That's my growth edge.
Okay.
So for the type 4 is called the romantic, sometimes called the idealist, also in the heart center. Probably what we think of as the most emotional of all of the 9 types. The attention of the type 4 goes to what is missing. There's an idealized something out there that if I could just bring that back in. There's a core abandonment issue for the 4. They feel very deeply, and their emotions can be they can be very high and they can be very low, and they actually like those yummy feelings of sadness sometimes. The type 4 presents differently, less bubbly from the 2 and 3, even though a heart type 4 has eyes that often look sad and deep. The eyes are usually unusual. I want to move right on to the head center, the 5, 6, and 7. So we'll do 5 next, called the observer. And the head center type is very different. It's a cooler energy. It's much more analytical. And the observer misses nothing It's as the name sounds, they observe. So their attention goes, though, to intrusion.
Okay.
And anything that might take his energy, because the construct, the mental construct for the 5 is that there's not enough time and energy.
Yeah.
So there's a conservation of both. And when you see the type 5, I'm changing to kind of show the energy. So 5, it almost disappears into the chair by choice. And it's very still. There's a conservation of movement. The 6 is called the doubting Thomas sometimes. And the 6 is a very questioning type. It's also, so their attention goes to potential danger and what would be feared. And they tend to scan the environment. And there's sometimes one can see a scanning. The eyes sometimes appear to be moving back and forth. They also hold themselves somewhat still, but not as still as the 5. The 6 can be much warmer than the 5, but there's still a cool analytical energy. The 6 is also called the skeptic. I want to be sure to say that.
Okay.
The loyal skeptic. They're very loyal. I want to move on to type 7 then. 7, which you know well, Charles.
No, don't talk about it.
Can be called the epicure, the adventurer. I don't know if there's one title that is more true to you as you see yourself. That 7, attention goes to future pleasant possibilities and not having limits placed on him. As long as I keep moving and I stay upbeat, then I will be okay. And then the fear that can be part of that 5, 6, and 7 construct goes into the background. So the 7 keeps moving quickly, has an innate ability to connect people and ideas and thoughts and things often that are disparate, and others might not put them together. And a real gift of the 7 is to do that. And they love knowledge for that reason. Moving on to the 8 and 9. So we're back into the body center where we started with 1. 8, 9, and 1 are at the very top of that symbol that I showed earlier. The 8 is usually called the boss. It's sometimes called the protector. Big energy. Of all the 9 types, it's the biggest. And I was once, I'm fairly thin, as you know, and once asked in one of the advanced classes to get up and embody an 8. So I made myself as big as I could, and it took a lot of energy. And 8s are known for having a lot of energy, and I'm changing the voice is usually big. Right. There's resonance.
Right.
And their attention goes to power and control. They don't want anyone controlling them, and they want to know where the power is in the room, and they have a 6th sense for knowing that. Their attention also goes to protecting others, especially those who are vulnerable or perceived by the 8 to be vulnerable and cannot protect themselves. The type 9 is at the very top of the Enneagram. And the 9 is what we call the mediator or the peacemaker. And they tend to see all sides of an issue, and their attention tends to go to external demands on them. What that means is that they lose themselves as a self-forgetting type, and that they merge with others' activities, and that's where they get their energy. So whereas their voice may be resonant like the 8, their body language is much more relaxed, and they kind of are the easygoing ones. They like harmony. Their attention will also go to conflict and make sure to deflect that and not to have conflict in the situation, which is why they're called mediator or peacemaker.
Awesome.
That's a quick tour around according to where attention goes. As you said, there are many dimensions to this system, which is why it's so rich and continues to give back from a self-discovery perspective.
Right. And I think people all over the world are familiar with that expression, where attention goes, the energy flows, or the energy flows where attention goes. So the trick is the conscious awareness of that energy flow, the awareness of that attention, because sometimes that attention, I notice it myself, sometimes I'm not consciously aware that my attention is going in different directions that it goes at times. And as we were talking before the program, the whole thing of checking my email, and when I do that, sometimes I it can be a trap for me, you know, because I get my attention deflected from where it needs to be. So this is one of the things that I just resonate so much with the work that you do, because it is very similar. And Enneagram kind of gives a framework for understanding these things and understanding the energy flows, which, and I don't want to get ahead of myself again, which makes so much sense for all of the other things that you do that connect with the Enneagram. It just makes total sense.
Thank you, and that may be another conversation, but I do work with energy. I call myself now an aura intuitive. I'm very sensitive to people's energy, and that's why when I teach it, I sometimes will use the energy of the type so that people can kind of get a flavor. And I know that energy, as I said earlier, we are all vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to the Enneagram, it can be taught in many levels, as well as there are many dimensions to it. And by the levels, I mean there is a somatic aspect to the Enneagram,
Yes.
which we have explored in this study group that Charles has referred to. And for each type, there's a contraction as one is run by this energy that we're talking about, where the attention goes, energy follows. And that can cause a contraction we're not even aware of. That contraction is in the soma, or the body someplace. And as we become more aware, so for me as a type 3, when I'm really on and I've taken on a persona to be what I think is all unconscious, is effective in the moment, even as I talk about there's a tightening in my solar plexus. And so we hold that on. That's a waste of energy. And so the somatic aspect of the Enneagram is to become aware of that tightness. Find a resource or place in the body or energy field where there is a relaxation or something positive, and then titrate, which simply means take a process to dip into that positive resource and take it into the contraction in my solar plexus. I'm doing an infinity sign. It doesn't have to be, but I like the energy of the infinity symbol. And I can begin to soften that contraction in my solar plexus. So that's the somatic aspect, which ties in so well with the other energy processes that I do as a practitioner.
Yes, yeah. So we've looked at each one of the numbers, the types around the circle and everything. I think I'd like to delve into a little bit of the wing influence of those, because there's a number on either side of each number. And there's a school of thought that says you're either one or the other. There's another school of thought that says, depending upon circumstances and awareness and everything, you may tend to have more influence from one wing under certain circumstances and situations, and in a different situation, you have more influence from your other wing. Talk to us about the wings a little bit.
Thank you, Charles. So for each type that I've described very quickly, because there again are many aspects to the types themselves, such as habit of emotion and habit of mind, we don't have time to go into in this moment. There's a home type. So when I say I lead with type 3, there are 4, that's my home type. There are 4 related types, and 2 of those 4 related types are what Charles is referring to as wings. And the symbol again is the 9-pointed star is within a circle. So the wings follow the circle on either side of the number. So for me as a type 3, you can think of the symbol as a clock. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So for a 3, I'm going to have on either side a 2 or a 4. Yeah. So the Enneagram acknowledges that we are not static individuals, that we are dynamic, and that we change from moment to moment, even in a given day. So whereas I may always lead with 3, I may want to draw on, now that I can be conscious and aware of this map of my inner world, there may be instances where I want to draw upon that 2 and be more 2-like. I think of it, if my 3 is vanilla ice cream, 2 might be chocolate, and there might be a moment where being a giver is more appropriate, and so I can bring some chocolate ice cream into my vanilla. Or if for 4, I'm very much more 4. I love music, as I've said, and I can sit in an orchestra concert and be so deeply moved, and that 4 might be strawberry. I think of red when I think of the richness of the 4. It's just how I see it. So then I have more strawberry in my vanilla. So I could be 2 and 4 wings, or I may be more dominant in 1. And in my case, I'm typically more of a 4 wing. So that's how the wing works. So to use another example, 9 at the very top, on the one side has a 1, because that's where we start around the symbol, and on the other side it's an 8. So a 9 may have more of an 8 wing or more of a 1 wing, and my partner has much more of a 1 wing, leads with 9. But that 1 wing makes him much more of a perfectionist, excuse me, and a little less relaxed as a straight 9. And some people have less influence from their wings than others. The influence can be very high or very low, and it can change at different periods in our life.
So the wings, and well, let me take a pause here too, because this is the world according to GUS, and of course God, universe, spirit. And one of the reasons that we're doing this with Self-Discovery Radio is to bring forth, there's so much wisdom. There is Sophia, as it's referred to in the Greek, the ancient wisdom, the perennial wisdom that is not limited to any one particular belief system or religion or whatever. And it is, whether you refer to God as God or universe or spirit, there is this indescribable, infinite oneness, this power, this energy that flows through all things. And part of my mission is to bring that unity and to maybe tear down some of the unfortunate walls that have been built up over the centuries, and some of the unfortunate disparities in the typing and deciding that you're different. There's only one race on the planet, and that is the human race. And we have different cultures and different understandings and different belief systems, and let's find the unity in those and to celebrate the differences that we discover between ourselves and others, as opposed to the tendency to point fingers and find fault, and to let people know how wrong they are and how right we are. So this is one of the purposes of this world according to GUS, and to explore these types of things. And I was personally first introduced to Enneagram as part of my process in entering the Lutheran Church. It was one of the processes that they used in their psychological evaluation. Now, I don't want any emails asking, how did you pass? Because the world knows I'm a little bit nutty, but apparently I did. So, but these are, and Gerry and Jeff and Felicia and some of the other guests that we'll have on the program are going to be sharing some of the things. And I just ask everyone to come with an open mind, and let's see and discover how all of these things come together to bring us into a beautiful, energetic oneness, one with GUS. All right. So that being said, let's continue and talk about those other parts. I know you're going now to the integration and disintegration, right?
I will talk about those. And first, I'd like to piggyback on what you just said, Charles, and that is that the reason I've been working with this system for 25 years and became certified, and I'm now on the international board for the narrative Enneagram, which is the certifying school, is because I so firmly believe that this can help bring harmony among peoples. And that's why we have scholarships. We raise money so that we can scholarship people in countries from Africa to Iceland to Ethiopia,
Wow.
where the Enneagram has not been. And now we have Enneagram teachers throughout the world. We have a strong program in China, and of course in Europe, there are many certified teachers teaching.
Wonderful.
The circle around the Enneagram unifies the oneness of which, and that habit of attention is literally a lens on the world. So the way this teaches compassion is, if my lens is limited to tasks and credibility and achievements, I'm missing 8 view screens, and this teaches me compassion for, oh, this is why Charles sees the world the way he does, or this is why my partner or my family member or my coworker.
Yeah.
And so I so value this system because it teaches compassion not only for self, as we become more and more familiar with our inner world and aware, it teaches compassion for those other view screens. And we know that we are all alike. We are all one,
Yes.
as you say.
Yes.
We are one human race.
Beautiful.
And I think it's an essential learning, not just a tool. The Enneagram is an essential learning for all of us for that reason. So the other 2 related types, to answer your question, and if this is visible enough, there are connecting the 9 points, a series of lines, and we call them arrows. And so the arrow connects. So I have a wing as a type 3, a 2, and a 4. I also have a line that connects me to type 6 and to type 9. And it's these lines that create the star of which we speak, the 9-sided star. And in the direction of the arrow is what we think of the stress point. So if I'm tired, too much going on in my day, maybe low energy, I can take on some of the characteristics of type 6, that loyal skeptic. And conversely, if a lot of energy, things are going well, and I'm just cruising, I can take on some of those characteristics of 9, maybe relax a little bit. And maybe begin to see all sides equally, and to be more of a peace person in the room versus the one driving the agenda. So I think one can easily see how accessing, again, once I'm aware of the system and how it works, I can choose to draw upon 6, which slows me down because I begin to question more and become more analytical and say, what haven't I considered here? What shoe might drop if I move too quickly and move ahead?
Yeah.
I already explained 9 pretty well. So for each of the types, I don't know, do we have time for me to go around and describe them, or is it more the concept of the arrows as the related types you wanted me to mention?
Yeah, I think we can start to go around, and as always, this can be a continuation, and we can at another program kind of pick up from where we left off. But no, let's do that. I think that's really fascinating. And you touched on the fact that we can consciously, as we learn about ourselves with the Enneagram. And I have to do a quick plug. Gerry was saying that Helen Palmer and Dave Daniels have written many books. May I add the excellent books on this, and the book that we use in our group is the Essential Enneagram. It's available on Amazon, and you can get it in a Kindle edition or the paperback, and it even has the little questionnaire at the beginning to kind of help you begin to discover what your type is if you have no idea. And it's just an amazing, wonderful, enriching learning process. And we're going to make sure that everybody gets Gerry's information and information about her website, and you can contact her. Contact her. The Narrative Enneagram has a website, and you can maybe find someone in your area that can help you along. So go ahead, Gerry.
Thank you, Charles. And I will again piggyback and say that the Narrative Enneagram's website is worldwide, enneagramworldwide.com, www.enneagram, ENNEAGRAM, worldwide.com. And on there's also a test, and I think it's $10, and the book is only $8, so you're ahead to buy the book. And they have videos of different type exemplars. There's a wealth of information on that website. So I'm going to start with point 1 again, back to the arrows. And again, this stress and secure type are the other 2 of the 4 related types to the home type. So for 1 under stress, the arrow goes down to type 4. So they have access to their heart. The one, again, in the body, sometimes not easy to have access to the feelings. So that stress, you mean I have to feel more when I'm compromised and I'm tired? Well, yes, it can be a resource for you. And then the secure point is type 7. So the ones will say, when I go on vacation, I can just relax. I don't hold myself so tightly and I can have fun, because when you're on vacation, you're supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
And so you'll hear one say that. The type 2, the arrow to stress point goes to the 8. And so the 2, usually upbeat, cheerful, I'm going to help you. They're helping to get their own needs met. And I've heard 2 say in panels, when I don't get my own needs met, the anger comes up and I can start throwing things. I literally heard a dean of women at a college say this. I start throwing things. Now, that's not a positive example. For the 2, though, going to 8, maybe they become more justice-centered and take on some of the protective, which fits into the helping others, but it's a very different energy for the 2. So that would be their stress point. Their secure point would be type 4. So type 4 was the stress point of 1, but it's secure of 2. And so for the 2 to go to 4, they may have more access finally to their own heart, as opposed to being externally driven by the needs of others. It can bring them in, because the 4 is more inner directed, much more inner directed than the 2. The 3 we started with, we already talked about, so I go to 6 under stress and 9 under stress, and 6 under security. Going to the type 4, so the 4 again, there's a line between 4 and 1, but now it's going in the opposite direction. So for the 4, 1 is the secure point. And 4s will talk about how that 1, instead of being all over the place with my emotions and idealistic and yumminess, which sounds wonderful, I hear 4 say, well, going to 1 is stabilizing, because I can see, oh, it's either this or it's that. It's not all this messiness in between. Not to say the 4 is messy per se, but it's a stabilizing, more certain place going to 1. Okay. And then for 4, they're back to 2, because there's that line, but 2 is their stress point. So the 4, maybe this, I can become more other directed and less in me right now when I go to 2. I'm more open to the needs of others. So it's also opening them in a way. The 5, so the 5 connects to both 7 and to 8. So for the 5 going against the arrow to point 8, that's their secure point. The 5 at 8 becomes a more certain and a bigger energy. They come out more. So instead of so protracted and into themselves and observing, they're going to be a bigger energy and come out more into the world. They may come more into their own power. They may actually become more controlling. So they're taking on a very different energy, if you will, and construct. Now, I want to be very clear that going to one of the stress or secure points does not make that 5 an 8. Right. Rather, there are 8 qualities in that personality construct that makes up the 8 that the 5 can draw on. When this is all unconscious, the 5 draws on it automatically and may become angry and domineering and not know what happened. You know, this 5 is usually back here observing and quiet. So the arrow then to 7 would be the stress point. And for 5s at 7, they have a greater capacity to connect thoughts and ideas. And I've seen 5s become more, not so much outgoing, but energetically engaged in the moment rather than back here figuring it out first. They can be more immediately there with all these ideas and thoughts and connecting things. It's kind of fun to see the energy shifts. So that, oddly enough, is the stress point for the 5, and you can see how, whether it's stress or secure point, there are different kinds of resources that add to the mix of the home type. Moving on to 6, we've already, that 6 goes to 3 because we talked about that line from 3 to 6. So for the 6 to go to 3, that's that 6's secure point. And the 6 can become, move a little more quickly, a little less scanning of the hazard, and therefore reluctant to move ahead quickly, to walk quickly. They can can do that a little more easily, more comfortably. When they go to 9, so the 9 that is going to be for the 6, their secure point, 6 going to 3, excuse me, is stress. I think I said that backwards. I'm moving too fast. They can take on the 3 and move quickly. They go to their secure point at 9. And so the 6 can become more easygoing at 9. They actually relax, and there's less of that. Because I've seen this in 6 is less of that second guessing themselves. 6 will even doubt themselves in the doubting Thomas aspect of the 6. So when I go to 7, then I'm going to go to the stress point first in 7, because that takes the 7 to 1. And I've heard some 7s say, you know, it slows me down, and I have to be more detail oriented and make sure I get things right.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a time for that, and there's another time when it's frustrating if you want to move quickly and on to the next fun thing or interesting thing.
Right.
For the 7. Right. And so then the 7's also connected to the 5. So the 5 is the secure point. And I've heard 7s say, so you can tell me if this is true for you, Charles, that that's kind of where they go into a man cave, whether it's a man or a woman. There's a place at 5 where they can recharge batteries.
Yes.
And just take it all in and maybe be a little more introspective.
Yes.
Instead of, you know, so much of the busyness.
Yes.
That's for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the times when just to, on rare occasions, there's those days where I just stay home, maybe in my home office. That's my man cave, and just to sit and read and just do whatever. And as you say, recharge the batteries. So, yeah, those are precious times. And that one analogy was true. I find myself as a leading with 7. I don't like to be bothered with the details, but there are occasions when I, particularly in the positions of leadership that I hold, I have to be. It goes with the territory, and it's a bit irresponsible if I don't. So that's where I need to be able to draw on that one and bring out that perfectionism. So
you can see how that serves you, even though it's the stress point, knowing that you can draw on that one.
Yes. Yeah.
And yes.
Well, it's a stress point still, because it's like, I don't want to do this.
You don't want to. Well said. That's well taken. 2 more. I want to finish the 8 and 9. 8, again, the boss or the protector. Under stress is going to connect to 5. So you have this big energy that 5 is probably the most contracted energy of the Enneagram. And so it too for 8 is a place to regroup and to become more thoughtful and less acting so rapidly. There's a saying in 8 world, it's ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
So at 5, there's going to be less of that, even though that's a stress point, and it's going to be that the 8s feel a little hampered and shut down by that. It's not particularly comfortable. So when the 8 goes to 2, the other connecting line, that being the secure point, 8s with a strong connection to 2, their heart feels more developed to the rest of us as we encounter them, because it's that less ready, fire, aim. There's there's someone out here who has a need that doesn't just need protecting, it's a more refined need, and I can be in my heart and be present to that person in a way that is less over the top in terms of my energy and my go-ahead challenging. Sometimes the 8's also called the challenger, challenging nature. It's a softening in a way of the 8, and that's a secure point. For the 9, so the 9 under security is going to go to point 3, and I'll hear 9s say that, oh, I like going to 3 because it gives me some energy. I'm not in that place of inertia. For 9s, because they don't know their own heart and their own agenda, there's an inertia that is difficult to get moving. Once they get moving, they can travel pretty well. So that 3 gives them some of that go ahead, get it done energy and focus that at 9 in their home point they might lack. Then going to 6 is that stress point. So they can become more fearful, more questioning at 6, and wake up a little, ironically, from this having lost themselves. Oh, I better be a little more vigilant here. So that 6 flavors, if you will, the 9 in that regard.
Yeah.
So to summarize, we ended at 9, and just to use that, the 9 could have a wing of 1 or 8 on either side, 2 of the related types, or go to 3 or 6, 3 under security, 6 under stress, the other 2 related types. So you begin to see how this is a very dynamic system that acknowledges we are dynamic human beings.
Absolutely. It's just so amazing. It's so phenomenal. And I thank GUS that I found you, and just the growth in understanding and the ability to observe. And this is one of the things that I find I look at, and I've done some fairly extensive reading myself. You know, there are many authors on Enneagram, B. Chestnut. I actually, my first exposure was Peter Wagner, I believe it was.
This is Gerry Wagner.
Gerry Wagner, yeah. That was what the denomination used his instruments and book and whatnot. Not to poo-poo any of them, being true to my 7 assimilation. I kind of take them all in, and there's good stuff in all of them. We are, as Gerry's pointing out, dynamic creatures. So we are ever, hopefully, we are ever learning and growing. As we are open to that, and as we really pursue that, excuse me, as we pursue that growth and development, just amazing things begin to happen. And that power of choice. Gerry, you said something early on in the program about just that whole thing of responsibility and choosing, knowing that we have the ability to choose. There are certain innate qualities that we have, but depending upon what the situation is calling for. And I ask many of my clients, who do you need to become in order to fulfill this dream that you have, or this goal that you're, what do you need to call up that is within yourself? And we all have, I heard you say at one of our group meetings, there is a bit of all of the numbers in each of us, as you have just demonstrated by our connections to the through our stress points and our distress points and our wings and whatnot. Next time we get together, that we would like to explore maybe a little bit more around the harmony triads that David Daniels came up with, and how that brings each number type a connection to each one of the 3 centers.
Right.
And we talk about the 27 subtypes with the one-to-one and the self-preservation and the social aspects of how the numbers, how the types kind of interact and everything, and seeing, again, it's just so fascinating when we begin to see how amazing we all, each and every one of us are, and we're all unique. There's never been a Gerry before. There will never again be one just like you. And I'm looking forward to hearing you tinkle the ivories. She was talking about her music and everything, but she didn't allude to the fact she was probably a concert pianist, and isn't
not nearly that good, Charles, unfortunately. But thank you. No, not that good.
But I love the mention that you made a few weeks ago about how that has is and can be a place of restoring and healing for you, that you need to maybe make more use of at times. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's tough when you're on a mission to change the world. So
that's right. I got to stay focused on that mission. After all, I lead with life.
and we have to stick together too. Gerry, thank you so much for this wealth of information. I so want to keep going into some of these other areas, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to do that. And I really hope that for our audience today that we have whet some appetites and have encouraged some people to look at worldwide enneagram.com. Find that, and then Gerry is can be found at what is that? Energyawarenesshealing.com.
Right. That's right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Charles. I've appreciated this opportunity and enjoyed our time together.
Yes, and you got to promise before Gus and all of our audience, you will come back at some point in the future and share more with us.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gerry. We've been sharing our time today on The World According to Gus with my friend Gerry Fathauer, and she has just opened up so many things around the Enneagram, an amazing teacher. I don't know if you noticed, those of you who are watching this by video, but how she brought all three centers. You could see and feel the heart changes and her body language as she was demonstrating as well as speaking forth these truths and everything. So open up all of your conscious awareness to the total movement of the power of Gus in the world, and let Gus be a blessing to you, and then you turn around and bless somebody else. How's that sound? That's it for this episode, this edition of The World According to Gus. We'll see you next time.
For shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.